Jessica Pegula didn't just voice an opinion, she staged a public reckoning against the Women's Tennis Association for its systemic failure of Alexandra Eala, backed by undeniable statistics. This was far more than mere commentary or a fan's grievance. In February 2026, while in Dubai, Pegula delivered a structured, data-driven critique of the sport's leadership. She presented a scathing indictment of a governing body that watched a 20-year-old Filipina sensation single-handedly revitalize the sport's engagement metrics. This athlete managed to draw 68,687 fans into the stadium, setting an all-time record for any Monday session in the history of the Australian Open. Despite this unprecedented draw, the organizers relegated her to Court 6. Pegula noted that the crowds were so massive they were literally wrapped around the entire stadium complex.
I think it was Eala is the match that I was looking at, and there was people like wrapped around the stadium just trying to get in, which is pretty crazy. And I mean, it's cool to see and it's exciting, but obviously, you know, for fan experience, I don't know because I'm not living that same experience, but hopefully the event kind of continues.
At that time, world number 1 Aryna Sabalenka stood before the media and openly stated she felt disrespected by the organization. Her frustration wasn't over personal slights, but rather the fact that the playing surfaces were only finalized 24 hours before the elite competition began. To have only 24 hours to prepare for the most prestigious event on the calendar was unheard of. Sabalenka's concerns were centered on physical safety and professional standards. That specific moment of defiance planted a seed of frustration among the players that, by 2026, had blossomed into a full-scale institutional crisis. By March 2025, the landscape began to shift dramatically when a 19-year-old wild card from the Philippines entered the Miami Open. Ranked well outside the top 100, Alexandra Eala didn't just participate. She began systematically dismantling the established hierarchy of the tour. She skipped the traditional transition period and immediately stunned the world by defeating world number 2 Iga Swiatek 6-2, 7-5 in the quarterfinals. This victory sent the Filipino community in Miami into a state of pure euphoria. Shortly after, Eala found herself across the net from Jessica Pegula. While the atmosphere was electric and the fans were deeply engaged, the venue was struggling to manage the sheer volume of people trying to catch a glimpse of the action. The reports indicated some of the highest attendance levels ever seen. Their semi-final clash turned into a marathon lasting 2 hours and 25 minutes. The match didn't conclude until well past midnight. Pegula, who held the world number 4 ranking at the time, narrowly escaped with a 7-6, 3-6, 7-6 victory.
That we're getting and making that still an enjoyable experience for them. But I did see some of the courts have like lines getting in and it seems really busy, and I saw some reports that it's some of their busiest.
Meanwhile, thousands of devoted Filipino supporters remained in their seats until the very end, refusing to leave even after the lights began to dim. That level of unwavering devotion was the first definitive sign of the cultural shift approaching the sport. Pegula took notice of this rising star immediately. She described Eala as a truly exceptional talent who takes the ball remarkably early and possesses an elite competitive spirit. Coming from someone whose family owns both the Buffalo Bills and the Buffalo Sabres, Pegula's words carried significant weight in the world of professional sports. She possesses the rare ability to identify a true franchise player, and she knew she was looking at one. This realization began to change the financial outlook for the entire tour. By the conclusion of 2025, Alexandra Eala had secured her first title at the Guadalajara 125 Open in Mexico. She staged a brilliant comeback against Hungary's Panna Udvardy, winning 1-6, 7-5, 6-3, after a very difficult start to the match. Consequently, her season earnings skyrocketed from $289,628 to $907,777. This represented an astronomical increase of 213.4% in a single year, totaling over 53 million Philippine pesos. By the conclusion of 2025, Alexandra Eala had achieved a historic milestone by capturing her very first professional title. She secured the victory at the Guadalajara 125 Open in Mexico, orchestrating a brilliant comeback against Panna Udvardi of Hungary. Despite a rough start, losing the first set 1-6, she rallied to win 7-5, 6-3, signaling a massive jump in her career earnings. Her career earnings surged from $289,628 in 2024 to $907,777 by late 2025. This represented a staggering growth of 213.4% within a year, catapulting her to 74th on the official prize money list. Even as her ranking climbed, her digital influence was already far outstripping her peers, a fact meticulously documented by sports journalist Ben Rothenberg. Media highlights and press conference clips featuring the young star were generating over 30,000 views on YouTube within hours of their release. These engagement metrics were actually surpassing those of legendary figures like Novak Djokovic and Carlos Alcaraz, the sport's most marketable titans. It was unprecedented to see a player who began the year outside the top 100 effectively outperforming the game's greatest icons in digital reach. The organization was suddenly faced with a legitimate global phenomenon, yet they seemed entirely caught off guard on January 19, 2026 in Melbourne. That Monday session at the Australian Open drew a record-shattering crowd of 68,687 fans, the highest attendance ever recorded. A massive wave of supporters from the Victorian Filipino community, estimated at 100,000 people, descended on the ground specifically to see Eala. They arrived in droves to support her first-round main draw appearance, yet the organizers made the puzzling choice to place her on Court 6. Rather than utilizing the massive capacities of Rod Laver or Margaret Court Arena, they relegated the event's biggest draw to a minor side court. Fans endured queues lasting over 90 minutes, with lines snaking back to the main stadiums, only to be turned away from the capacity crowd. With Court 6 overflowing hours before the first serve, thousands of heartbroken supporters were forced to watch the match on outdoor broadcast screens. Following her hard-fought match against Alicia Parks, the scene was so chaotic that Eala required a 12-man security detail just to exit the area. Thousands of fans surged toward her in a display of adoration that required professional intervention to manage safely as she left the court. Eala later described the environment as completely overwhelming, admitting she never expected such a massive turnout for her matches or even her practice sessions.
Things like that happen. I mean, it's you could argue that it was, maybe a poor schedule and maybe they could schedule him on a bigger court. Yes, but again, she's so young and she's just coming through. I saw the other day with Alex Eala, that's been a talk, and which is understandable. There's some players coming from respective countries, like she's coming from Philippines, which is now a big deal. She's been the biggest ever, tennis player from that country, which is a big country, and there's a big interest.
Facing immense public pressure, the Australian Open organizers eventually issued a social media statement promising to learn from this experience for 2027. However, a deeper analysis reveals a far more troubling reality than a simple mistake made by a few tournament officials. By acknowledging the error, the administration effectively admitted they had already possessed the data required to avoid such a catastrophe in the first place. They were fully aware that the local Filipino population in Victoria was over 100,000 people and that her digital reach was legendary. The attendance projections were clear, proving that the decision to use Court 6 was not an oversight, but a deliberate failure of institutional foresight. The situation reached a breaking point in Dubai, where the 2026 duty-free tennis championships became the stage for a total systemic collapse. The 2026 Dubai Duty-Free Tennis Championships quickly descended into the most chaotic tournament in recent memory. Within the opening days, an unprecedented 10 players either withdrew or retired from the competition entirely. Both world number 1 Aryna Sabalenka and world number 2 Iga Swiatek were among those who cited extreme workload and fatigue. The tour was visibly fracturing, with top-tier athletes openly admitting they were pushed beyond their physical limits. Paula Badosa was forced to retire due to a leg injury, marking her 38th career walkover and sparking a social media firestorm. Despite being accused of disrespecting the sport, Badosa countered by describing the 11-month season as a relentless nightmare. Elena Rybakina succumbed to illness, while Barbora Krejcikova withdrew, leaving the draw in a state of total disintegration. As the established stars faded, Alexandra Eala remained the sole force keeping the tournament's momentum alive through sheer performance. On February 17, 2026, Eala stepped onto the court at the Aviation Club and stunned world number 8 Jasmine Paolini. She dominated the match with a 6-1, 7-6 victory, proving her talent belonged on the world's biggest stages. Her momentum continued as she defeated world number 32 Sorana Cirstea to secure a place in the quarterfinals. Both matches were played before standing-room-only crowds, with the local Filipino expatriate community transforming the stadium into a festival. Eala described the atmosphere as a blessing, noting that the energy from the fans was nothing short of amazing. While the top seeds were heading home, a 20-year-old from the Philippines was single-handedly carrying the commercial weight of the event. This brings us to the most significant revelation of the entire saga, which links directly back to that exhausted moment in Miami. On the very day Eala defeated Paolini, the chair of the organization, Valerie Camililo, made a historic announcement. She unveiled the formation of the Tour Architecture Council, a body specifically designed to overhaul the global calendar by 2027. The person chosen to lead this radical transformation as the council chair was none other than Jessica Pegula. This appointment completely reframes the narrative of Pegula's previous frustrations into a story of institutional power and reform. Pegula was no longer just a disgruntled player. She had become the primary architect of the sport's future structure. The woman who once wrote that she was tired on a camera lens was now the person in charge of the schedule. Her council consists of prominent figures like Victoria Azarenka, Maria Sakkari, and Katie Volanets, alongside high-level tournament executives. The group includes operational specialists like Ashley Kuber and Joan Pannell, ensuring the restructuring is both practical and profound. This transition signifies that the era of mere protest has ended and the era of governance and systemic change has begun. In her press conferences, Pegula used the images of fans overflowing at Eala's matches as concrete evidence for her reform agenda. She argued that while the sport is clearly growing, the current infrastructure is simply incapable of supporting that expansion. Pegula's background in professional sports ownership provides her with a unique perspective on revenue streams and franchise valuation. She understands how to navigate stakeholder resistance in a way that most player advocates throughout history never could. When she declares the current calendar is unsustainable, she isn't venting personal frustration. She is delivering a cold business assessment. One final detail from the Dubai quarterfinals has yet to be fully appreciated by the mainstream sports media. After Coco Gauff defeated Alexandra Eala 6-0, 6-2, she used her platform to praise the incredible Filipino fanbase. Gauff expressed her gratitude for the new demographic Eala had brought to the game, noting how wonderful it was to play in such a vibrant environment. She even shared a lighthearted secret, admitting she reframed the chance for Alex as motivation for her own performance. World number 6. Amanda Anisimova mirrored these sentiments, praising Eala as an exceptional representative of her home country. The next generation of stars clearly knows how to adapt to the Eala effect, leaving the governing body with a difficult question. If the players can adjust to this cultural shift, why has the institution itself been so slow to follow their lead? The 2027 reforms are on the horizon, but whether the organization will truly embrace this phenomenon or return to Court 6 remains to be seen.